characters at all. It's a problem. People have said, will you write a book from the point of view of Lestat's mother, Gabrielle? I don't like her enough to write a book from her point of view. I think she's mean. I mean, you know, I just can't do it. And, you know, I have to love a character to really do the story from his point of view. I'm not good at villains. Just not, you know.
Queen of the Damned.
Queen of the Damned?
Yeah.
What's your opinion of Queen of the Damned?
Of the movie?
Yeah.
I hated it and I blacked it out. I remember nothing about it. It was a big disappointment to the readers. They were, most of them, very upset. I think the people who are fans of the movie now were the ones who saw it before they read the books. And they didn't, you know, they liked it and they took certain things away from it. I don't think it was, as I remember, it wasn't a bad movie exactly, but it just didn't have a lot to do with the work. But Hollywood's really changed since that movie was made, and I think producers now really are, they care about what the readers of the fan base for a work thinks. They care about that. Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, all of these have been experiences where the readers were very much respected. And that's working now for people, and it's greatly improving the situation. When that movie, Queen of the Damned, was made, that really wasn't the case. You know, it was different.
As a child, I was terrified of vampires from all those scary movies like The Mummy that you were describing earlier. And I'm just wondering how it came to you that did you have an early fascination with vampires when you were younger? And then also, it sort of set a precedent from interview on that vampires could be romantic, and it's just a whole different experience from the horror, you know, and I'm just wondering where that came from for you.
Well, when I was a little girl, I saw an old black and white vampire movie at the neighborhood theater. It was called Dracula's Daughter. I think it was made in 1934. And it was about the daughter of Dracula, a countess in London, struggling with the curse of vampirism. And it was very romantic. She was tortured, she was tragic, and she was also a painter. And she would invite people to her studio to model for her and then drink their blood and kill them. And it was a big struggle, but it was a very, I mean, all the potential of the vampire character was there. The vampire as outsider, as outcast, as cursed with a great gift, and yet a gift that's almost intolerable to embrace. It was all in that movie, and I never forgot that movie. That was an age where you could see something like that and then it would disappear, and you would have no way of ever finding that movie again, or even if you didn't remember the name, ever looking it up or discovering where it was or how to see it. And it was many, many years later that I sat down to write Interview with the Vampire, and that was my idea of vampires. The Countess Dracula, that tortured figure, that woman who was cursed, who is sensitive and loved life, but had to destroy people in order to live, and had a ruthless, monstrous streak in her that would surface when she drank blood. And I just assumed that. I mean, that's what fascinated me. I just ran with that. And only over time have I put all the pieces together and seen how on target that was, you know, for the potential of the vampire. I think the vampire really is just about the most powerful, it's one of the most powerful metaphors we have for the outcast and the lonely one. And also, I think we all long, not only do we long to be immortal, we think we are. I don't think life would be tolerable day to day if we didn't think and feel that we are immortal. And that really influences all of our fiction in some way or another, from murder mysteries, which seem to be metaphorically about finding out who made us subject to death, really, catching the killer, and the killer's nature, and to everything in our poetry and our art. It's all about that. How can we feel immortal like this, and how can we die? So that's really where it all began for me.
Sure. Christopher.
Yes.
All right, so a lot of your early work had heavy crime fiction elements, mystery, thriller, and then you've transitioned in some of your work into stuff that's more fantastic or science fiction elements or supernatural elements. Did you find that liberating? Were there challenges with that? Did you have to use a different part of your brain when you started to transition into things that were otherworldly?
Did everybody hear the question? The question is basically, did I have to use a different part of my brain when I began to write things that were supernatural and fantastical? And in period. But that was a first for this book. Look, here's what I learned. All the things I told myself I could never do, I have ended up trying. I'm not saying I'm great at them now, but I ended up trying. I said I cannot write supernatural. I cannot keep the rules straight. I don't like it when the cosmology feels like fifth season Lost. Oops. You know, where it's being pulled out of a hat and there's no governing mythology. And I said it's just too hard, I would complain. And people were always sort of steadily pushing me to try it. And I needed circumstances to be close to ideal before I would. And I was in a place in my life where I had done a book that really hadn't quite worked. And I wasn't happy with how it was received or how it had sold. I had the opportunity to try something different. And I was financially in a place where I could take the time to really just shut all the other critical voices out of my head and go to ground and try something I had never done before. And that was a book I wrote called The Heavens Rise. And it was way too long. And when I did finally turn it into my publisher, he said you have to cut 50,000 words from it, which is practically the length of most novels these days. But it was, I needed that amount of time to try something new and to do all of the mathematics that were required for an alternate reality that was going to work for me. And once I had that experience, it was like, why did I tell myself for years that I could never do this? It's like never say never. There's really no point. I mean, mostly I think what I was saying is I'm afraid to try and afraid I won't be comfortable in the doing of it. This book, I think the period stuff was way more challenging for me. This book is set in Edwardian England, and you know, obviously I just wanted to be like, well, I've seen Downton Abbey, so we're cool. You know, but it wasn't, period involves a way of seeing the world, or at least addressing a popular way in which people saw the world in that era, that involves a believability to their reactions when they encounter something like a mummy who pops up out of a coffin. A contemporary person isn't going to react to that mummy the same way that Julie Stratford will in 1914 in London. And you really, history is your hobby. You read history for fun, which is great. And I don't. You know, I like to swim constantly in the type of books that I also like to write. So that was more, but I had a good guide. And now that I've, you know, once you do it, and people don't line up outside your house to burn everything you've written, you're willing to do it a second time. Or maybe that's just me. Another question. Orange Theory, yes.
Yeah, hi. Great book, Christopher. I read this
Thank you.
This is good. And Anne Rice, are you going to finish the trilogy on this one? Because you left it off with the cliffhanger. I was just wondering.
Yeah, you're talking about the Angel Time books.
Right.
Yeah, I want to get back to them. I've had the third book ready to go in my brain for years, and I'm very eager to get back to that. I also want to get back to the werewolf books that I wrote and do a third one there. It's a matter of time. I mean, it's like, I'm thinking of Night of the Living Dead and all those shuffling people on the porch trying to get through the door. And the novels are like that, you know, and then once somebody gets through the door, and I think, all right, go with that, you know, and the others have to stay on the porch longer, shuffling around. But it really is, it is like that. But I do, and I will, given an ideal world, I will get to finish those series, because they're really not, well, the wolves are complete in a way, but the Angel Time books are really not complete. And I want to go on with that. I'm glad you asked that. You know, it's inspiring to hear that somebody maybe wants that to happen, really. Thank you.
Yes.
So, Christopher, so You're writing it, like you said, it's changed, and now you're doing more of the supernatural. Is there any kind of other styles of writing that you want to, I guess, jump into and try to work on?
The question is, I've tried different styles of writing. Is there anything else I want to try that I haven't done? Well, not as many people know that I did comedy for 3 years with my best friend Eric Shaw Quinn, who's seated over here. We did a podcast that was really more like a live radio show called The Dinner Party Show, which I would pitch to people as a cross between a Prairie Home Companion and Fernwood Tonight, which was a great way to find out how nobody knew what Fernwood Tonight was, except for some really diehard Martin Mull fans. But Eric's sister actually nicknamed it a Fairy Home Companion. She's nice like that. But, and that was like, we just took risks every week. We just did whatever we wanted. We were doing it ourselves, and when there was nobody else in the room telling you what you had to do, you could just let it fly. I'm trying to think of what I have. I mean, I've done some romance novels that are available digitally, and I think sci-fi would be really hard for me because I'm a terrible math person. But I'm sorry, the microphone is big. Yeah.
Go with comedy. I mean, do it. Do a whole series of the Golden Girls.
I don't have the rights to the Golden Girls. That would be the one thing. But I'll tell you what my plan is. This was my plan. If you are a Golden Girls fan like I am, real big pivot here, folks. Just keep up. In, I think, season 3, Blanche tries to write a romance novel. I'm going to write that romance novel because if you start catcalling me, yes, Rose says it's terrible, but Rose is a moron. So we cannot take her opinion for everything. So I want to do the branded Blanche Devereaux romance novel. And then later, stay with me, Blanche's sister writes a trashy romance novel that's supposed to be about Blanche. I'm going to write that novel too. And then I think together we can do all of Joan Wilder's books from Romancing the Stone. Yes, sounds like a plan. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, I see a hand sort of buried towards the back there. Yes. Yes.
Hi, I really love your first novel, Identity of Souls, and Still Garden, those era. Do you ever think you would adapt them to film?
The question was, she really loved my first 2 novels, Identity of Souls and The Snow Garden. Thank you. Identity of Souls has been optioned by the company that made Manchester by the Sea. So we will see. I have been a little busy with the Vampire Chronicles, so I should probably check in with them and see how it's going. I think that the pull that most novelists I know feel now is to television. I mean, it was what we felt with the Vampire Chronicles. The challenge of, there was usually a time with each book that I wrote where I sat down and I thought, how can this be done in under 2 hours? And it was a cross between surgery and eating humble pie. Because it would require me to go back and look at the book and try to decide what wasn't essential, which became a critique of my writing. Like, what did I put in there that didn't need to be in there? So it was challenging. And so the idea of even doing something as a limited series now on TV is so much more exciting and enticing. And I can definitely see The Snow Garden as a twisty college campus sexual murder mystery playing out in 4 or 5 episodes. I think what authors can be resistant to is the idea of having to build something into a series that doesn't feel like a series, which sometimes publishers will force us to do. Well, that book did well. You should try to see how you could make that character come back again and again and again and again and again and blow up the world every time. And you just can't necessarily go there. I think a series character has a specific DNA. But thank you. Yes, all the way in the back.
Well, that being said, with the Vampire Chronicles, number one, when is it going into production, and how much input are you going to have?
The question is, when is the Vampire Chronicles going into production, and how much input are we going to have?
They're going into production Monday at 5 a.m. They will go into production probably in 2019, I think. And we're very fortunate to both be producers on the show, and Christopher is writing the scripts. So, you know, I think that's about as good as it gets. I mean, we're very, very happy with the whole thing.
I will repeat my public statement made at the top of the broadcast, which is for a year now, we've been working with wonderful creative partners at Paramount TV and Anonymous Content. One of them just joined us, David Cantor in the front row. And we have been rigorously developing the type of show that Mom described when she said the rights were available, which is a show focused on the life of the vampire Lestat and his origin story. So We are on the right path. We're on the same path. We just can't tell you exactly what's happening yet, or else